Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our new June block of the month. Here at Sew in Common, we piece our quilt blocks in the hoop of our embroidery machine. And then at the end, we quilt them on our embroidery machine too. This is a great technique whether you're someone who's been quilting for a long time, but have a little bit of difficulty using your hands in that quilting process, need a little of that stress reduced. That's what doing it on your embroidery machine can do. Or if you're completely new to the art form of quilting and you want to take advantage of a newer technology, then this is perfect for you as well. Or maybe you've quilted for a long time and you just want to learn a new technique. Any of those reasons are a great reason to sit down with your embroidery machine and piece some quilt blocks and make some beautiful quilts and quilted projects. Hi, everybody. I'm Diana here at Sew in Common. I'm the owner and the designer and the educator. And this month is our June block of the month video. And it is this month the Quatrefoil. Now, normally I have the block hanging back here, but I wanted to keep it as a surprise. There it is. That's the Quatrefoil. Isn't that beautiful? Now, the Quatrefoil, quatra meaning four, has four distinct lobes. So one in each of the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. The four corners are created by four patches, and then the center is just a solid. And in today's video, we're going to go over how you piece all three of those different sections on the embroidery machine and talk about how all of that goes together. Okay, now you can get your free pattern for your embroidery machine at our website, sewincommon.com. All of our blocks of the month for 2023 are free. So please go over there and grab your pattern. Once you grab it, you'll have a folder. You'll open the folder and you'll find the file that works with your embroidery machine. Plus, you'll have all your written instructions and your templates as well. Now, I know many of you that have been with us understand that I'm getting over laryngitis. That's why I have still kind of a rough voice. So please excuse me on that. And thank you all so much, because I know this is actually coming out about 5 or 6 days, well, about 4 to 5 days, I guess, later than normal, because I literally have had no voice until last night and this morning. And this is as good as it's getting. So thank you so much for hanging in there with me on that. So you can get that. If you like this video, or if you've done any of our others, if you've liked them, if you've been kind of watching for a while but you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We love having you as part of the community. I'm always available for answering questions. And of course, you get all of these great free block patterns throughout the year of 2023. Plus, we're going to have a great big beautiful quilt to do at the end of the year. And we've had some other smaller projects and things throughout the year as well. So please click that subscribe button and click the bell. We'd love to have you. All right, everybody. So we do have video for all three of these. We're going to go through all three of them, the lobe, the four patch, and the center. But I also want to tell you that for next Sunday's video, which is week 2 of the block of the month, that's typically an inspiration week or maybe a new variation of the pattern. Well, for next week, that video is a little bit shorter than normal, but it is a great tip for making that 4 patch all-in-one hooping, because I will explain the process of how we would normally make the 4 patch in today's video, but Sunday's video is going to give you an extra special tip for making that 4 patch. So watch today's, maybe make one block the way I show you in today's video, and then Sunday, when you get this tip, in the second week video, you're going to be ready to start adding 4 patches to all your quilts, because you're going to see how easy it is to do that. All right, everybody, let us go over to our camera by the machine, and let's start making June's block of the month, that beautiful Quatrefoil. And I'll see you. Okay, so, excuse me. So here we are at the machine. And I have prepped a piece of stabilizer in my hoop. I'm using a wash away stabilizer today, the kind that you would use for freestanding lace, not the clear kind. I have my pieces. We're going to do one of the lobes of the Quatrefoil. So I have my triangles that we cut from our squares as per the directions, and I have my rectangles. I also have my scissors. I have my favorite glue stick, and you might also want to have a seam roller handy as well. I normally piece with a light gray thread. This is 0184 from Isacord. Today I'm piecing just with a regular black so that you can see it. So I have done my first stitch out, which is the border of our overall finished block. And now my next step is also going to be stitched directly onto the stabilizer. And that is going to be where we're going to lay our first rectangle. Now, in this version of the Quatrefoil, I have created it in a couple of parts. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that as soon as this finishes, because I want to take this out of the machine. Alrighty, here we go. So do you see this general shape here? In a Quatrefoil, normally, all of this is one fabric and one piece of fabric if you piece it on a sewing machine or by hand. But I'm having us piece it, even though we're going to use in this demonstration the same fabric for the triangle and this rectangle, I'm having us piece it in two pieces because if you want, you can play with different colors here. So I wanted to make that available to you all to be able to do that however you liked. So for our very next step, we're going to take one of our rectangles. This is all mapped out for you on your instructions. Whoops, and I'm going to lay it down over the top half. I just make sure with my fingers, yep, that I can feel the thread in there to make sure it's all covered. And now I'm going to stitch it down. This whole piece takes about 3 minutes to stitch out. That's the top and the bottom, the whole piece. It'll probably take us a couple of extra minutes, only because I'm demonstrating it for you. But when you're just doing it, as long as you have your fabrics prepped and cut, you should be able to whip through this with no problem at all. Okay, now we're going to trim. And let me just move the camera down a little bit so you can see. And I'm going to trim roughly 1/4 of an inch on this side, and at the bottom. This is technically an interior piece, so it's not going to need any leftovers on the outer edge for trimming away at the end. So I can just give that my 1/4 inch, or roughly 1/4 inch. And I truly just eyeball this. As long as you're in there roughly 1/4 inch, even if it's a little less, that's perfectly okay. Now this is quite a bit of leftover fabric, so that's going to go in my fabric tin for use with my scraps that we're going to be using later on in the year. And now I'm just going to trim across the bottom. And this piece will just go in the bin. Okay. Now my next piece is to start on this corner. So I'm going to take one of my white triangles. There we go. And I'm going to lay it so that it is roughly on the same edge as this fabric here. If it's down just a little and some is sneaking out, that's fine as well. In fact, I usually like to do that. I'm going to place this back in, and we're going to piece this right on. This first step, we'll attach it, and then we will flip it, and then we will continue to stitch it down. Now here is where your glue stick can come in handy. I'm going to put some glue in here. I'm going to actually slide this out. I don't usually take them all the way off, but sometimes sliding them out a little bit is good. Now I am going to flip it and stick it down. Now here is where your seam roller can come in handy. And now we will stitch that right down. And now we'll be ready to move to the other side and do the next one. And on this one, I'm not going to do any trimming at all because all of the leftover fabric is outside of the boundary box, and that is when I will trim that up when I cut it out of the stabilizer, so I don't need anything there. Now for my next piece, I'm going to lay it right side down. Remember, if you're new to piecing in the hoop, your first piece of fabric is always right side up, and all other pieces start right sides together or right side down. Okay, and we will stitch that down. I'm sorry if it's a little hard to see because of the light. I have my machine set to the lowest light. Okay, now I am going to just remove this. Need to adjust my little glue stick here a little bit. Now I will flip it and stick that down just like that, and we will stitch this piece down. If you've been with us for a while, you understand this process. You're a pro at it by now for sure. But I like to go over it each time because we have lots of folks that have not been with us before, so I want to make sure everybody's on the right page. Now, technically, this fabric that I've chosen, I'm noticing, is actually directional. So I don't normally really care, but I will take some proper care to do it in a directional format for you this time. So now we're ready to place this piece. So if I want it to be directional, like so, then I will flip it like so. And that way I know when I flip it to do the final seam that it will be in the right direction. I don't think the direction on this fabric matters a whole lot, but we'll look at that here again in a second. So I don't believe that the direction, if it were upside down or whatever, I'm not sure it would make a huge difference, but with this particular fabric, but it is truly a bit more directional than I thought. Alrighty, so now I'm going to add my glue stick. And whether you use a glue stick or not is entirely up to you. I just find it keeps my fingers out. I am at a point where I'm a little hesitant because, as you all know, last month or the month before, I really cut my finger quite badly with my pinking shear rotary cutter. The first time I had cut my finger with a rotary cutter, and I've been, well, I mean, we weren't using rotary cutters when I first started quilting over 50 plus years ago, but once we started, I'd never done that before. All right, so the very last step for the lobe is now we're going to stitch the block all the way around because that's going to connect all of our points here where our fabrics are overlapping. And to do that, all I do is take a little bit of my embroidery tape and just lay it across where they're joined so that the foot of my embroidery machine won't snag there and cause problems. I could just watch it and hold it, but just to be extra careful, I just added those 3 little pieces, and now we'll stitch it all the way down. all the way around. And then this tape will just peel right off really easily when we're all done and we're getting ready to cut it out. And the white that I chose definitely is not directional. So it looks kind of like it is in a direction, but it is not. So that doesn't matter at all. Okay, so that is our first lobe. And we will cut these out under the camera here in a little bit after we've made the other couple of block sets that we need. But that is the lobe. So now I'm going to reset my hoop and we will start with the next piece, which is going to end up being our little 4 patch. So stay with me. All right, so one other thing I just want to mention before we move on to our next block is that in a lot of the blocks that we've been making so far this year, we've had a lot of trimming in between. The nice thing about the lobe for the Quatrefoil is that the only piece we actually trim beforehand is this triangle. Everything else, the fabric is all outside the boundary, and so we just trim that at the end. So that can actually be a real time saver. All right, so now we're moving on and we're going to be making our 4 patch. And our 4 patch is actually two patches that we will put together. So I have my blocks ready. I have one dark and one light, and I have stitched down my boundary box. Now the next step is for me to stitch out my first placement piece. And with this one, I am going to lay down my lightest color first. That way when I add this and flip it, I won't get any shadowing through this white. So that is something that you might want to think about, is laying your lightest piece first. And I'm just going to lay that. And because I can kind of see through this, I can almost eye it. See, I've eyed it just well enough that I can see my line through there. That's my 1/4 inch. So I'm giving myself enough space so that I'm not going to have to trim this, which will end up saving me a little bit of time. So we've laid this down and we're going to stitch it down now. Excuse me. And neither of these fabrics are directional, so I don't really have to worry about that at all. Now that's a nice 1/4 inch there, so I'm going to leave that be. All of the rest of the sides are outside the boundary box, so I don't need to trim them yet. And I'm just going to bring this up here and lay it down right on top, right sides together, and we will stitch this down. Now, with this one, normally I would put my glue stick on the fabric, but because it's the only other piece and I can see that box there, I'm just putting my little bit of glue right on the stabilizer, and then I'm going to flip and press that down. That way I don't accidentally wrinkle my fabric or anything like that. I like putting it on the stabilizer if it makes sense to do so. So now we're stitching this down, and for every 4 patch, you're going to make 2 of these. Now, just like with our Quatrefoil block that we just made, we're going to do a stitch out all the way around to connect our 2 overlaps. And I'm just going to put a little bit of tape here where they overlap so that my foot doesn't catch on anything. There we go. And now I'll just stitch that down. Now we'll make 2 of these, as I said, for each 4 patch that we need to make. And so when we go to cut these out, I will show you how these are going to go together and make each one exactly the same, okay? Because all you'll do with the second one is just rotate it 180 degrees and then you'll have the right one. So that is the 2 patch for our 4 patch, okay? And now the last thing we need to do is just our center square, which is one big 5-inch square. I know, why even do it on the machine? Well, we're going to talk about that. So let me reset up and we'll get started on that. All right, so here we are and we're ready to do our center square, which I've chosen this yellow fabric. Isn't it pretty nice and sunny? I have stitched out my design onto, or my border onto here. Now you'll notice with this pattern, there is only one step to it, and that is this line. And I didn't add a second one because you just redo it. Your machine will set back up to that initial one and you'll restitch. So I stitched it out once, my machine reset itself to do it again, and now I will lay my fabric and I will stitch it out a second time. Now, I know you're saying, some of you, especially if you're new, why in the world don't you just cut these out? Well, the whole idea with stitching in the hoop for a lot of people is that a lot of precise cutting is difficult on their hands. They may have hand problems. And so I do this because, one, for that reason, for those folks, but the other reason is because then all of my squares are backed with the same stabilizer, and that stabilizer makes everything have the same weight to the hand, which is important when you go to sew things together. Now, even though I'm going to take and wash the stabilizer out, you can, I have a video coming out with a whole new technique for washing away this stabilizer, which I love. It's made my blocks look great. Wow, I ironed this and it's still not pressed quite well. So I'll be pressing it again, so no problem. But here this is, and when I trim it out, it'll have the exact right amount for the seam allowance and all of that. So again, there will be no guessing, and because I have that border box there, which you can also see from the back, I have my line for sewing my blocks together. So I have my guide there as well. So there's lots of reasons that you want to do even just your plain blocks as well. Alrighty, so we have done our center block, oops, and we've done our 2 patch for our 4 patch, and we've done our lobe of the quatrefoil. And so now we will go over to the other camera and cut these out, and we'll look at how to put them together. So let's go do that now. Okay, so here we are under the camera, and we're going to trim our squares. We'll go ahead and trim the 3 that we just stitched out, and I've removed my tape. I just tore off my tape. Now, just be gentle with your tape, even if you're using a embroidery tape that's easy to come off. Be easy with it because you don't want to rip out your straight stitches. Straight stitches are going to be the easiest ones to come out because they're just a straight stitch. They don't have a lot of backing stitches and stuff like regular embroidery stitches do. And so I've taken that off, and I always tear with the fold, so instead of tearing against this where it's going to pull this back, again possibly tearing, I tear with it. So that's a tip for you there. Now this box, this boundary box, is our finished size, so we need to trim 1/4 inch from this line. So I'm going to take the 1/4 inch mark on my ruler, and I'm going to lay it right on that line, and I'm starting here on the white edge so it's easier for you to see. So you can see my 1/4 inch line right on that edge. And again, I like to use a pinking blade on my rotary cutter. They're easy to find at your fabric shops and craft stores, and that pinking blade will actually help to take out some of the bulk in your seams. So that'll be your seam allowance now, and I'm just going to work around the entire block. And you can see in that one I was really close to being right at a 1/4 inch in one spot, which is great. That meant I had very little to trim away. Now sometimes when you trim these, you have a lot of fabric on the outside, and those scraps can be used in your scrap bin, or they can be reused for other projects. This particular block set doesn't have a lot of leftover. So there we go. There is this one done. This is our first lobe. And what I also like to do is just take a little diagonal swipe off my corners. This allows me to, again, get a little bulk out of those seams where the corners are going to come together. And so our first lobe block is done. Now I'm going to bring in, this is the 2-patch of a 4-patch set. So we do 2 of these and sew them together for our 4-patch. And I'm just trimming this away. Okay. And just 2 more sides. There we go. And I'm all lined up here. And just one more little side here, and I'll have this one done. So see, they're super simple. And just like I did with the other one, I will go ahead and do a trim.
Motion detected at the G8V1GH01.
Sorry, I had somebody at the door. Somebody will have to wait a minute or come back. Okay, and this one didn't complete. It did. There we go. I got it all off now. And I'll get that little corner, and I'll just trim on that little corner. There we go. So see, we're just really taking off what I call the dust, but it really can help when you're doing your, when you're sewing your blocks together. Now, for the 4-patch, you're going to have another one of these, and so this one is laid down light to dark, and then you would just flip it so that the dark is on this side and the light is on this side. So you have light, light, dark, dark. Okay, I will show you that again in the finished block at the end here. So you would do 2 of these, you would put them together, and you would sew right to the inside. That's your guideline. Just put your needle right there on the line and move it 1 click to the inside. Just 1 click. That's all you need to do, and then stitch it right down, and you'll get that perfect 1/4 inch every time. It's super easy. It's much easier than when we do it on our sewing machine, that's for sure. And I've been doing it for a lot of years, and you know, one of the things that I really do love about quilting with my embroidery machine and piecing is that all of my seam allowances get built in, and I get these little extra guidelines and things like I'm showing you here built in, so that I don't have to worry as much about getting my 1/4 inch foot lined up every time I sit down to my sewing machine. I have a whole thought about the whole idea of that anyway, but we'll save that for another time because I could rant about that a little bit. The whole idea of the scant 1/4 inch gives me hives, but you know, I understand why people do it and why they like it, but it's not something that I really ever bought into. I was taught to do a 1/4 inch, and a 1/4 inch is, as long as you're doing it a 1/4 inch every time, then you should be okay. And we did it by hand for hundreds of years without problems. So anyway, I will stop now. I will not get caught up in that whole scenario. But that is one of the reasons I like doing it with my embroidery machine is because I don't have to worry about all of those little things that we have to worry about with our sewing machine. It really has made it an easier and a fun process. So here is our center block. Then we will end up with 4 lobes in the 4 corners, and then our 4 patches will go in these corner spaces, and you'll see all of that, the layout, the full layout and the color and where everything goes in your instructions. And so now we'll flip over to the regular camera and we'll finish up. So give me just one moment. Okay, everybody, so we're back and we have made that quatrefoil. What do you think of that block? Isn't it lovely? Let me give you a little history on the quatrefoil. The quatrefoil, the idea of quatrefoil, the 4 lobes, kind of has that idea of a cross look to it. It's a very, very old form outside of quilting as well. Goes back thousands and thousands of years. Very well known in France, has different meanings. A lot of countries, especially in older times, thought of this as the 4 books of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that kind of an idea. It's also used a lot of times as a 4-leaf clover. And then it can also, as you can see, just in the block that we did this week, it really can be seen as a beautiful flower block, I think. I just love it. And not in the 2nd week, but in the 3rd week, I'm going to show you a little variation on this. You're not going to get different patterns or anything for the variation, but I'm going to show you how you can change one small thing in this block to make a slightly different variation, which I think you'll like as well. But you can see how easy it is to make. And then remember, this coming Sunday, which is the 2nd Sunday of June, our video is shorter, but it's going to be all about making that 4-patch all-in-one hooping. And I know you guys are going to love it, especially those of you that like to sew a little quicker, those of you that think you feel like you're wasting some of your stabilizer by doing them just as 2 patches. So I know that you're going to love that. Remember to go grab your, excuse me, go grab your free pattern over at sewuncommon.com. And also remember, if you need to get a hold of me, if you have questions of any kind, or if you want some information from me, contact me at support@sewuncommon.com. Now, I will also tell you that this week we are on vacation. And later this week, I am going to have a special video for you all from the National Quilt Museum in Paducah, Kentucky, because we're actually going to Paducah for our vacation because I have family in that area. I was actually born in Metropolis, which is just right across the river. I was almost born in Paducah. My mother was grocery shopping over there with my grandmother when she went into labor with me, but they were able to get back to Metropolis. My dad was in the Navy, and that was the hospital that we were assigned to. So I was born in Metropolis, and so we're having a family reunion down there this week and getting to see lots of family that we haven't seen in ages and ages. So we're really excited about that. In fact, when you are seeing this video, I'm already there enjoying my family, and I have not seen them for so long, so I'm super excited about that. But later on that week, when we're home, I am going to have footage for you from my trip to the National Quilt Museum there in Paducah. I know that some of you have probably been there. So if you have been there, drop a note in the comment. Let us know what you loved about the National Quilt Museum. And throughout the week, I will also try and post photographs over on our Facebook page, Sew in Common, or on our Instagram account, which is also Sew in Common. So you can check out either of those places to see some of the pictures. from vacation and from the National Quilt Museum. I'll share lots of those different ones with you. All right, everyone, it's been great to finally get this video to you. And of course, you know that here in the next couple of weeks, we've got that big announcement because our new product is coming out, our basic sets for your In the Hoop blocks. So that's coming just in a couple of weeks now. We're very excited. So I can't wait to see your quatrefoils. Please post your photographs on our Facebook page or on our Facebook page because we'd love to see them and I'd love to share them with people. So until next time, what I always tell you, go sew life beautiful, make some beautiful quatrefoils, and we'll see you very soon. Bye for now, everybody.